Great. Thank you. I love the idea of the tattoo and branding. And we're going to actually talk a little bit about that in a way. So it's really good to be here. I love, Greenville is just so wonderful. It was really good to kind of walk around this morning and see Greenville and be here with y'all. And we're going to talk today about the idea of romancing the brand is kind of the idea. And that's the name of this book. And like she said, I was at Coca-Cola for 11 years before going into academia, and I do a lot of consulting as well. And the brand is king at a place like Coca-Cola. And it should be at most organizations, right? And that's what we're going to talk a little bit about today, and how we make those connections and ultimately create a relationship. And I call it with a consumer. You all may call them members, but they're the same entity, right? They're that person that we are doing business with. And so let's just start off real quick, just to kind of get us warmed up a little bit. I want you guys to sit in. Maybe I think you have little things you can write down or whatever. Spend 30 seconds and think about a brand that has a really deep personal meaning to you in a positive way. Okay? And it may be something from your childhood. It may be something, that you experienced last week. And then on the flip side, I want you to think about a bad experience you had with a brand or a poor experience you had with a brand. Something that a brand may have a negative meaning for you. All right? So write that down. Think about that for just, 20 seconds or so. And I'm going to ask someone to kind of volunteer. We'll start with the strong brands first. All right. Who's got a good one? I'm an optimist. I like to start with a positive first. So who's got a positive brand experience they want to share? Oh, yeah, okay.
I have several. I'm a Coca-Cola kid.
Okay.
My daddy retired from Coca-Cola 42 years.
Oh.
My grandfather from Dr. Pepper.
Oh, wow. You breathe soft drinks, don't you? Yes, okay.
Jet Coffee is something that's local to my area in Louisiana.
Okay.
And Jet Coffee is about how they serve you first, coffee second.
Interesting.
And their service is impeccable.
Okay, so they're kind of creating this bond with you because of the service. What's the service like?
It's just warm and friendly.
Okay.
You have a person outside taking your order.
Ah.
When you drive up, if your coffee's not ready, they're calling you by name. They're telling you, Pam, your coffee's just...
So they personalize it.
Absolutely.
All right.
Stickers of the week. They do
Great.
all kind of fun for you.
Great example. Thank you. Who's got another one? Yeah. Chick-fil-A, down where I am, based where we are here in Atlanta. Talk to me. What is it about Chick-fil-A that makes it a positive experience for you?
They're always seem happy to serve you. Yeah, everything's, my pleasure.
My pleasure.
And you can tell when somebody's worked there because they will say, it's my pleasure, even if they're working somewhere else.
Absolutely.
It's ingrained into them.
Absolutely. So, again, it gets back to making you feel at home, making you feel comfortable, making you feel welcome. You're not a hindrance to them. They're trying to be helpful to you.
And the food's consistent.
Food is also consistent. Another key aspect of strong brands. Good. Another one. Yeah. Chewy. Okay, talk to us a little bit about Chewy.
From the user experience, they remove a lot of friction. They don't accept returns. Instead, if you get something incorrect or wrong size for your animal or whatnot,
Right.
they say donate it to the local shelter to a friend.
And by the way, for those of you, Chewy is it's a pet, pet supply store online. Okay, yeah.
But their team has a budget where they can do something nice for someone, so they'll send handwritten notes on your dog's birthday.
Okay.
If a pet passes, they send you flowers or a painting or something. They sell dog food, but they take it so much further than that.
They go out of their way, right? They go out of the way. They personalize things. They make you feel special. Make your dog or cat feel special. Interesting. All right. What about, okay, let's flip it. Negative. Negative experiences. Anyone want to share a negative experience with us that you had? Yes. The DMV. That's a brand. We all know the DMV, right? It's a brand. Okay. What happened?
It's hell on earth.
It's
They don't know what they're doing. They'll send you back for papers they made up that isn't required. It's awful.
just makes for a miserable experience. Okay. Yes. Dollar General. You get what you pay for, huh? What happened to Dollar General?
Either Walmart, Dollar General, you go in there, and I'm a little OCD about price per pound, and I remember how much I paid for my shampoo and all that stuff, and you go in there, it's not always the cheapest. But they lie to you
Yeah.
by making you feel it's the best price.
Right. It's a brand they make you a promise that they don't live up to, right? Yeah. Okay. So okay. Good. One more. Bad experience with a brand. Yes. McDonald's. Okay. Well, talk to me about a little bit different than Chick-fil-A, huh? So talk to me about McDonald's.
Kiosks in our area, so you don't have any interaction with anybody. Just go in and
No.
serve yourself.
Okay. So it's no personal interaction. No one talking to me like I'm a human being. It's going and aligning with a kiosk and a computer and doing touchscreen. Well, that's true too, right? Maybe it's a step up, right? They're not getting the type of employee, and again, this is a little bit of a generalization, but perception is everything in our space, right? So McDonald's is seen as maybe not the best employees, and certainly we know they're going to kiosks, which takes the personalization out of it. So what we're going to talk about today, these are great examples, and what we're going to talk about is kind of how we separate out good brands from bad brands. And we're going to use an analogy of a relationship like we have with other people, right? And so let me kind of talk a little bit about, first thing, let's just kind of ground ourselves in what is a brand. And a brand, right, you know, people sometimes think of it, oh, well, it's a name or a logo or a jingle color, some kind of thing I see. Yeah, that's part of it, right? And it helps to identify who that provider is. But importantly, it has a distinct meaning for customers. A distinct meaning in both their head and their heart. So if you think about it, right, let's just take Starbucks, for example, right? Starbucks. First thing that comes to mind when you hear or see Starbucks. Just start shouting them out. What's Starbucks to you? Burnt beans, okay. What else? They're consistent. They're, you know, if you like that burnt taste, it's still consistent, right? Right? Okay, what else? They're expensive, but guess what? People pay for it. They find value there, don't they? What else? It's everywhere, right? And this, if I think about Starbucks, right, and I do an exercise, and I put a bunch of consumers in a room, right, Starbucks has this mental map that we think about, that people go in, and it's how people describe Starbucks. There's a lot of good here, right? If I go from about, from 7 o'clock all the way over to about 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock, it's pretty positive. There are a few over here between 3 and 6, maybe not. But that's the perception of what people take away of Starbucks. And guess what? Starbucks plays a huge role in outlining what you will say about Starbucks. Everything that Starbucks does is to get people to talk about things in this kind of a way. It's prescriptive. I try to go in and they try to go in, and it's intentional. Now, there are some things here that may not be so good, right? Yeah, you all said expensive. Okay, Starbucks is expensive, but guess what? People are paying for all of this, so they're probably not too upset about that. If I brought the brand team in here, they may not like some of these words, right? But for the most part, they'd probably say, yeah, that's really what we're trying to do here. But we do this all the time. We continue to bang home messages about Starbucks. We continue to create an experience to where people are, for the most part, going to say these positive things. Now, other people out there, competitors, the media, whatever, are also saying things, so I don't always have 100% rosy perception, but it's important for me to know, it's important for me to make that contribution in terms of what I ultimately want my customer, my member to take away. So, and that's again, a brand, its meaning resides in the minds of its consumers or its members. You can say what you are, but at the end of the day, it's what your customer or member says you are, period. Perception is reality. So I want to take you back, and this is a story. So how did I write this book, and how did I get involved in how we create relationships? And that's what we're going to be talking about today, is how do brands and consumers create a relationship? And it goes back to my days at Coca-Cola. And at Coca-Cola, we love talking to our consumers. We do so many focus groups. We sit down and we talk to them because we want to understand why they're buying our products, what's going through their head, what kind of decisions they're making, how they feel about us versus our competitors. And so it was a typical Coca-Cola focus group. We had a bunch of beverages laid out on a table like you see there. And we had a woman who picked up a can of Diet Coke. And she looked at it and she said, I drink 5 Diet Cokes a day. Maybe you know someone like this, right? Maybe you are someone like this, right? I drink 5 Diet Cokes a day. It's always at my side. It's there during the good times. It's there in the bad times. It was there last week at my side when I got a promotion at work, and it was there at my side a month ago when I found out my uncle was sick, or whatever it was. It's there for me. I can depend on it. And then she said something that really made me think. She's like, it's not a stretch. I kind of think of Diet Coke supports me like a boyfriend would. A boyfriend? And people are doing the same kind of reaction y'all just said. Boyfriend? What? People are laughing. We have these back rooms, right? If you ever seen CSI or anything, you're watching the people in the back room with the mirror behind you. And the people said, my agency was there, we had our marketing research person, the brand team. Like, did she really just say that? And certainly she did. And I did a little further research on it, and it's actually throughout academic literature that we as consumers think of brands in a relational context. There's a construct there. Some brands are very impersonal. We don't really know anything about them. It's like your Starbucks barista or maybe your postman, right? You don't know a lot about them, right? It's just there. They deliver service. As long as it's good, we're good. But there are others that we feel so strongly about that if something happened to them, if they went away, if they changed, we would feel a sense of loss. In fact, there are other brands that we feel so strongly about, we put tattoos of them on our body. We wear them as logos. They say something to others about us. We use them because it says something to other people about us. And that's what's going on here. And the idea is that we want to engage in a relationship, and we do engage in a relationship because at the end of the day, a relationship is beneficial to both parties. It's about one looking out for the other. It's about making each other feel special. Chewy, Chick-fil-A. Some of those, what I just heard from you guys, oh, they're personal. They make me feel good. They make me feel like they care. That's a sign of a good relationship. So at the end of the day, the ultimate relationship, right, is love. I love X. And we're not talking sexual love, right? We're just romantic. I mean, we're talking like passionate love that I feel so strongly about this particular brand that, again, to an extreme, I'm wearing it, I'm telling other people, right? Because if we can get people to fall in love with our brand, and this is proven in research, consumers who are in love with our brands will find more value in them and ultimately pay more for them. They will be less likely to cheat, using that relationship analogy. What do I mean by that? Well, think of, I'll use a Coca-Cola example that we used to talk about a lot. You're out to dinner with your significant other, whoever that is, and a hot little number comes walking through the door. If you're totally into who you're into, you're not going to notice that hot little number walking through the door. And that hot little number is your competitor with a new promotion or a new innovation or a new communication plan. And they're desperately trying to get your members' attention. They're desperately trying to get them to see how good they are. But if your member is in love with you, the consumer is in love with us, they're not going to notice that. They're going to be true. They're going to stay loyal. And ultimately, they become advocates and evangelists. They go out there and they start telling other people. Remember, go back when you were first found, when you first found that perfect person, right? Man, you wanted to tell the world. You wanted to tell the world about that, that significant other that you discovered. Same thing with consumers and brands. If we get strong relational bonding, they're going to tell the world. They're going to tell other people, hey, I went to such and such a credit union last week. They treated me so well. Let me tell you about it. You really need to go, if you're having this kind of issue, you really need to go seek them out. And they're going to buy more from you more often. Obviously, they're going to help you grow your business. So that's the idea. And in the book, we talk about the ongoing steps to romancing the brand. I'm going to use an example to illustrate that for you all here in just a second. It's kind of a fun example that we talk about a little bit in the book. But there are 6 steps, right, that I like to kind of focus on. First one is knowing yourself. What are you and what aren't you? You talk to any of these relationship gurus and they're like, well, you can't really be in an effective relationship with someone else until you really know what you are and what you want and what you're all about. What makes you special? What is your secret sauce? We had a phrase at Coca-Cola, different, better, and special. 3 words. What makes us different? What makes us better? More of the head stuff, right? And what makes us special? That's the heart, right? So what makes you different? And then figure out who's going to find what I do appealing. Who is my type? To think about it in relational kind of ideas, right? Who's the type I am going after that's going to find what I'm selling or what I am all about compelling? And then the idea of when that first impression, you don't get a second chance to make a first impression. What's the first impression like with that customer or member and your credit union or your brand? Because if it's bad, they're gone for good. That first time someone goes to a restaurant, it's bad, they're never coming back. You got to meet memorably to, again, use the relational context. After you meet, you got to start getting that person to feel positive about who you are. How do you get, if you meet memorably, how do you get them to come back? To go on that second date, that third date? Over time, we got to continue to deepen the connection. In other words, we can't get into a relationship rut. Relationship ruts, we all know what those are. You keep going to the same place for dinner, it's the same people, it's the same thing, blah, blah, blah. It gets boring. How do you create innovation and news to keep the relationship fresh with your member? And then finally, there will be times where you may have situations where you mess up, or you keep having a relationship rut. And ultimately, you got to come up to a situation where you're either going to make up with your customer or you're going to break up. And this is the cycle. The idea of romancing the brand. So let me give you an example that kind of illustrates this, because this is fun. Anyone remember all the Dos Equis stuff? Remember Dos Equis, the most interesting man in the world? All right? So the most interesting man in the world is really a case in study. So let me just play you an ad here, and we're going to dive into this, okay? Let's see if I can get this going here. Whoops. Let's see if this goes here.
Do it on your laptop.
Might need to hit the thing. Hold on. Here. Whoops, sorry. Do y'all remember this? This is kind of coming back, right? This is a best-in-class case study here because it really created a brand that came out of nowhere because Heineken acquired the distribution rights. The story of this is Heineken acquired the distribution rights to this brand called Dos Equis. And they had to figure out, what are we going to do with this? Because they really, they had a number of brands, and this is just one more that they acquired a distribution rights to. But the marketing team went out and said, you know what, we got to do something with this. So let's do the first phase of romancing the brand. Let's figure out what we are. What makes us different? And a couple of different things, all right? So the first thing you know, when they acquired it, it was a small regional beer. It was available in a few southwestern states, Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, those kind of areas. The idea of, anyone know what the name is? Two X's, Dos Equis. Anyone have a guess of what that name might mean? Why they call themselves Dos Equis, two X's? Ex-what? Ex-wives? Good guess, no. But that's a good guess. Well, actually, it was launched in 1897 to celebrate the 20th century. So it went way back, okay? Two X's, 20th century, okay? The other thing you needed to know about Dos Equis was it actually has an interesting background in that it was born in Mexico, but it actually has German heritage. So a German brewmaster immigrated from Germany into Mexico and started this beer company. So it had a little bit of a different taste profile than what you would associate with a typical Mexican beer. So its flavor kind of had a mysterious, unexpected flavor associated with it, okay? So at the ground level, that's kind of what the brand was about on a base level. And then they realized that, you know what, they were doing a lot of business in Austin, Texas. Really a lot of, anyone know what's in Austin, Texas? University of Texas, right there, right? So they went and they said, wow, why so many Texas students are drinking this beer brand? And they realized that the Texas students were going down to Mexico, where the brand was bigger, and having a spring break, and doing spring break. I'm trying to, I don't know what that is. But basically going to spring break, discovering the beer, and coming back to Austin and drinking it, all right? So they were like, aha, we got it. We're going to be the spring break beer. That's what we're going to own. There was a problem with that idea, though. There was already a brand from Mexico that kind of owned that whole sun and the fun spring break idea. So it wasn't different, right? Corona was all about beaches and bikinis and all that kind of stuff. So they had to start over, right? And they had to start over and go back and start again. Try to see if I can get this thing off. Why this is doing that? Okay, there we go. So they had to go in, and they went into bar after bar after bar, night after night after night. See, brand marketing can be kind of fun sometimes, right? I think about, man, why didn't I work at a beer company instead of Coca-Cola? But they went in and tried to understand this Dos Equis drinker. Know your type. Who were they? What was important to them? Why were they going out, and what role did beer play? And they found that ultimately they were in a relationship with the beer category. These guys were actually, they were looking for a beer to connect with because they thought, these, I guess, super mature guys thought that the beer advertising was talking down to them. There was this frat boy humor. I remember at the time, like Bud Light, some of these beers were like the guy would shake it up and he'd open it and it would spray on somebody else. But that was kind of the essence of what beer advertising for these guys was at the time. And they said, you know what? If I get a beer brand, I'm open to kind of connecting with another beer brand. So they dug a little deeper and they said, well, what do they want? And what they wanted, and what was very important to them, was they wanted to have a good story to tell. In other words, when you were with a group of guys, if you couldn't contribute to the conversation, if you didn't have a good story to tell, even if it bordered on the edge of believability, you had to have something to contribute to the group. And if you didn't, you weren't going to be an integral part of the group. In other words, you weren't needed. So these guys had a fear. They had a fear of being boring. So the Dos Equis team was like, aha, this is potentially compelling. And they created the idea and the concept of interesting. That Dos Equis, and by the way, it was loosely tied to those brand functional attributes, what was actually in the bottle. The history I told you about, the mysterious flavor, because it was German-oriented, right? So it was loosely tied to the functional attributes, but they would position this brand on focus on emotional benefits. And we're going to talk about emotional benefits soon and how you make people feel. And the idea was that they would create a personality around the brand. And it would be a personality that was going to be intriguing and mysterious. And that ultimately, Dos Equis would be a badge. We'll talk about badge value. It's the idea of it says something about who I am to others. That I use this product, I go to this place, I use this service, and because I do, it says something about me to other people. And oh, by the way, it went back to Mexico. But not sun and fun Mexico. Nope. Mexico at night. Mysterious Mexico. Dark Mexico. That's where they would go. And ultimately they said, you know what? To make this come to life, we're going to create a character. That character is going to be the most interesting man in the world. And there he is right there. It's like some 70-year-old, I think he was a Jewish guy from New York. Jonathan Goldschmidt. He was an immigrant from somewhere, like Poland or somewhere. So acting, right? But Heineken went to them and said, whoa, hold on here, their management team. They said, wait a second. You're targeting this early 20-something-year-old, and you're going to put this 70-something-year-old guy as your primary spokesperson? What gives? What do you think the Heineken team, why do you think they would use a 70-something-year-old guy to represent the brand targeting 20-year-olds, 22, 23-year-olds? Okay, so talk to me a little bit. Why?
Because if they were worried about being interesting to their brand, they want to know that they achieved it at some point.
Okay, yeah. He was aspirational. Because Heineken was like, just use at the time, like Jason, the Bourne identity, all the Bourne stuff. Just use like Jason Bourne type character, right? But the team said no, right? These guys are already, right, a little sensitive enough, right? They were already a little worried about being boring and stuff. But I put a 20-year-old, 25-year-old out there who's doing all this crazy stuff. Well, first of all, it's not going to be very believable. And second of all, if it is, right, even if it is believable, again, I'm very sensitive about that. I must say, boy, I already don't feel so great about myself. And now you're showing me this 25-year-old that's doing all this great stuff. Boy, I must really be a loser. So Were you going to ask a question? Sorry.
I'm just wondering if maybe the young guys were more interested in.
Well, he is. Well, that's part of his and I don't know what, there we go. That's part of his charm, right? Is he's got ladies who are 50 years younger than him fawning all over him. I want to be that guy. I want to be that guy in 50 years. I want to be that crazy uncle that's just flown in from his African safari to go to the wedding, right? That's what I'm looking for. Yeah.
So he's got enough experience to be interested.
Yes. He's had the life experience, right? And there was one other thing that they said on the screen. I don't know if you heard it or not, but I don't know if they said, he doesn't always drink beer. Did you notice that? I don't always drink beer, but when I do, I prefer Dos Equis. Well, Heineken was like, the management was like, what? We're going to give them a way out? Does that ever happen? You see commercials or ads or messages and they give you a way out? And the brand team's like, yeah. So why do you think they had that line in there of, I don't always drink beer, but when I do, I prefer Dos Equis? Yes?
If you're not a beer drinker, you might try it because
Okay,
you don't
that
like
could be
any
part
other
of it.
beer, then you would like that.
Okay, maybe that's part of it, yeah? She said if you weren't a beer drinker, maybe it brings you in. Another, yeah, that's partially, but there's a bigger one, another big reason they do. Pardon? He's drinking the best, potentially. Beer is basic. Go with that. Talk to me a little bit more about that. If he drank beer, what?
Basic, like every Joe's gonna drink it.
Okay.
This is the exception to the rule, right? It's a quality thing.
Right. And the idea was if he always drank beer, he wouldn't be as interesting. So the character and the brand trumped the consumption message, okay? So basically it was about, hey, I don't always drink beer because I'm an interesting guy. You're an interesting guy. It fed into this brand personality that they were trying to create. If he always drank beer, he wouldn't be as interesting. So, you know, the idea of creating the bond and creating a personality, he is an actual person that they used. We don't always have to do this, right? We don't have to have a person that represents us. But we need to think about our brand in that way. We need to think about creating the ideal brand character. If your brand, if your credit union was a person and you met them on the street, what would they be like? Some questions you might want to ask. What's the kind of car they would drive? What do they do for a living? You can do this for any brand, right? What are their hobbies? What do they look like? Are they male, female? Are they young? Are they old? Tall, short? I don't know. Think about their personal characteristics. What do they look like? How are they dressed? What do they do for fun? Where do they go on vacation? Are they island people? They go to the beach? Are they family people? They go hiking in the mountains? Do they chase bulls in Spain? What are they doing? What are their political views? What's their personality? Are they a wallflower? Are they very professional? Are they the life of the party? Are they the person that's the politician that's shaking everybody's hands? What are they like? You need to be able to answer these questions about your brand because this is how we make connections with members or consumers. You met any of these brands on the street? Going back, we're here at the Westin, right? Think about that for a second. Here's some hotel brands, services. If you met them on the street, any of them, can you picture what they might be like? Give me one, and let's just throw this out there real quick. Anyone, a brand on the street, what would they be like if you met Holiday Inn or Marriott or Westin or DoubleTree on the street? What would they be like?
DoubleTree has chocolate chip cookies.
Okay, DoubleTree's full of cookies, right? That's okay. So what does that mean? What are they going to be like? Okay. Homey and inviting. Part of that being depicted by what they do. You're gonna, W, what's W like?
Very hip, modern.
Yep.
If it was a person, they'd be very fashion forward.
The fashion person, they are dressed to the nines. They're probably driving a pretty sleek, cool car. They are ready to, they're going out at night. This is what you need to think about, because this is how we connect with consumers beyond just brand X does this for me. This is how it makes me feel, right? Who represents your brand? Smart Water used Jennifer. Now, again, sometimes we use actual celebrities. Sometimes we use non-celebrities. Sometimes we don't use any celebrity, but it's in the minds of our communication. We're creating a personality that transcribes and is like a person, right? So, I want to introduce you the concept of the brand pyramid. And this is something you can think about that helps you build everything you need to be in one fell swoop on a page, okay? At the very bottom, it's your product descriptors and firm activities. This is the actual stuff you do. Nike. Nike attributes are the air soles, the waffle soles, maybe the swoosh, the mesh on the shoes. It's the physical part of the product. What is the physical part of your credit union? Then that leads into benefits. The benefits that we provide our consumer or our member. And there are two types of benefits. There are tangible benefits, which are what we call functional. What I do for you, I will give you a mortgage. I will give you interest on savings. I will give you a CD. I will help you grow your financial wealth. And then there are emotional benefits. This is how you make me feel. I feel confident. Nike is all about confidence, right? The functional benefit, Nike's going to cushion your foot when you run that marathon. But because I'm wearing my Nikes, I know that I just have a little bit more. I feel that little burst of confidence. What does your credit union, how do you make your members feel? And then, here's that, there's that brand personality again. What are the personified brand traits? Where does this ladder up? If your brand was a person, what would they be like? And then that brings me up to what we call the badge value or the social cachet. What does it say that your member uses you versus another bank? What does it say about them? Maybe it says I'm smart, I'm savvy. Maybe it says I like personal communication with people. I value family. But what is it that they use you, right? People use Nike and wear Nikes because it says they're serious athletes. That's why they use them. It says something about me to other people. The beer I order, the car I drive, the logo that I wear on my shirt or get tattooed on my neck says something about me to other people. And that leads us into the core essence. This is the short phrase or mantra that timelessly describes the brand. Walmart is low prices. Disney is magic. Coca-Cola is happiness. Volvo is safety. These are things that forever and ever, amen, will be associated with that particular brand. And this is where we can really differentiate. This is where we don't spend enough time. We do pretty good in telling people what we're all about. And maybe better people can link that to some kind of functional benefits. This is what we're all about, and it's going to do this for you. Less so in terms of how you're going to make you feel, and even less so in terms of brand personality and what it says to others about me because I use you. So if I'm able to take this from Dos Equis, we've just illustrated this example, right? Dos Equis, here's some of the stuff we talked about. It was born in the 20th century, 1897. It was born in Mexico, German heritage. It has that unique flavor. right? It's got a unique, I'm sure that's a benefit. It gives me a unique and unexpected taste. It makes me feel confident, engaging, and entertaining. It's how it makes me feel when I'm drinking a Dos Equis. And the brand's personality, it's charismatic, it's adventurous, it's intriguing, and it's mysterious. And what does that mean? It's a badge value that says I'm interesting. I drink a Dos Equis, I order a Dos Equis from the bar, you might want to go talk to me. So I'm an interesting guy. And the idea of what Dos Equis' core essence is, it's all about staying thirsty. You think they mean that, stay thirsty for beer? What do they mean, stay thirsty? For life. Keep coming up with that new adventure. That's what Dos Equis is. Keep being interesting. That's how it works, guys. That's how we build up these brands. All right? So the results were huge for this. This was a best in case. Their case volume double. There was a spoof on Saturday Night Live featuring the most interesting man in the world. You guys, this is Jason Sudeikis, right, who was on the cast at the time, now known better as Ted Lasso. Joseph Gordon-Levitt was the son of the most interesting man in the world, and he was pitching a beer called Tres Equis. So go Google that at some point, okay? Tons of viral activity, right, with the idea of I don't always do X, but when I do Y. 24 was a huge show at the time, right? I don't always do X, but when I do Y. I'm not sure why this keeps doing this, but sorry about that. So that was the idea, all right? So now, a couple other things in the little time we have left is about how we continue to make it mutual and grow these relationships after we've met them and after we found out everything. You got to engage, okay? Wendy's is great at this. I'm going to give you and whether it's, some of these brands do sampling programs, events, right, where you're engaging with your consumers. And that's important. And I want to share with you, let me get this up here. Let me show you and we think about brand personality, okay? We talked about the personality, how you engage with personality. This is from the Today Show. They're going to talk about something called National Roast Day and what Wendy's does with their social media account.
The Wendy's Twitter account is known for being, whether you knew this or not, very fun, very quick-witted with its responses online. And for the totally real holiday, National Roast Day, Wendy's decided to roast anybody who replies to their tweet, and there were some good ones, so we've compiled them here. Now, replying to Velveeta, they're all official accounts of companies and people and whatnot. So this is Velveeta's official Twitter account. Wendy's wrote, "How are you a verified account when you're not even verified?" Here's another one replying to the Twilight Movies Twitter account with a blue check mark. Wendy's wrote, "Name an actor who isn't trying to live down being in one."
Wow, that's gonna leave a mark.
Some accounts actually tried to fight back, but Wendy's roasted Oreos, the cookie company, by tweeting, "New flavor idea, don't." To which Oreo responded, "We get it, flavor isn't for everyone." Take that, Wendy's responded, "And some of these flavors aren't for anyone." Al, you're not going to like this. Little warning, meteorologist David Walter wrote, "By National Roast Day, do you mean the delicious roast beef sandwiches from Arby's?" Do that to Wendy's. Wendy's wrote back, "By meteorologist, do you mean the talking Sue who reads the work done by forecasting computers?"
That's a sick word.
How about that? They're really funny.
I don't know, Wendy's way
Yeah, they're both semantic.
They've gotten into some burger wars with their competitors.
Wendy is sassy.
Yeah, very sassy.
She is.
Did you hear what she just said? Wendy is sassy. Here was a outdated, old-fashioned, bottom-of-the-barrel type of QSR brand, right? It was just, it's fine, but it's not nothing, so it's been around. People associate Wendy's, Dave, remember Dave, the old Dave Wendy's commercials, right? But all of a sudden, Wendy's is able to start using Twitter, using social media to create a cool, hip, sassy personality. And all of a sudden, people are going to find that attractive, right? And there's all right. This says, for those who Groupon, do you have any 2-for-1 roast me deals from Groupon to Wendy's? And Wendy said, for those who don't mind pulling out a QR code on a date on a Tuesday. So, I mean, they're just kind of funny stuff, sassy kind of stuff. So, at the end of the day, your target consumer, your target member should say, I want to hang out with this brand. This is a brand for me. At Coca-Cola, we had a 5-word statement that we would do these trackings every 3 months or so. And if somebody strongly agreed with this 5-word statement, they were correlated to be a super, super loyal consumer. And that was, is a brand for me? Is a brand for me? If someone said, definitely agree with that, we knew that that person was ultra loyal. So we were always trying to get, and because it personalized it, is a brand for me, says something about me. It personalizes it. We knew that was a strong part of, going to be a strong consumer for us. You can create experiences to engage others. Cadbury had a thing where they went in and they hid Easter egg. You could hide an Easter egg using like Google Maps and send it to somebody else to have them try to go on a scavenger hunt for the Easter egg. Maybe it was the place, a special place that you guys shared. Hey, try to go find this Easter egg. It engaged consumers. And again, relationships can take other forms, right? Let me show you this. This is a service group. This is Lowe's. I'll show you a second of this too, because this is kind of fun as well.
Education is empowering, and people learn by doing. It's just how we do it. And that's why we built the Halloran How-To. The Halloran How-To is a virtual reality training tool that teaches people how to do DIY projects when they want to learn. Anything from painting a fence to tiling a bathroom. You actually are grabbing tiles, water, and sponges. It feels like you're actually there doing it. It's very neat. I love doing it myself. I've done it 3 times, and I'll do it again. Lowe's has been using virtual and augmented reality for years now. The Halloran How-To project takes us even further. We did an A/B test, and half of the customers went through the virtual reality Halloran How-To, and then the other half just watched a YouTube video. Customers who went through the virtual reality version had 36% better recall. The potential is endless. DIY should be fun. Let customers come in and improve their life. This is something nobody else has. This is a big, big deal for us. Teaching, learning, education, that's it. Even if we can unlock just a little bit of that mystery, that's going to have a massive impact and a change that I don't even think we can fully understand.
So again, not all relationships have to be in love, right? In this case, right, Lowe's is acting as a teacher, taking the fear out of home improvement, right? So that's, again, another way to get, this is how we deepen connections with our members, with our consumers. How do we get them to engage? We think about the romancing the brand kind of steps to romancing the brand, all right? And as far as deepening connections, create news. Don't get in that rut. Create strategic news. What's new? What's different? What are we going to do to surprise and delight our member or our customer? Apple's great at this. Even a 120-year-old brand like Coca-Cola continues to be creative. Even Doritos, new flavors, new ideas. This is how you continue to deepen connections. What are you doing to continue to engage with your consumer? What are the new products that you're offering or the new services you're providing? How do you create that and make that strong? Because if you don't, we get into a rut. You might be in a rut right now with your customer base. That's cool. Just admit it and work your way out of it. Okay? We all have them. We have them personally in our own lives. We have them in our brand's lives. We have to continue to, and this is especially true for brands that have been around a while. Wendy's. Wendy's was arguably in a rut with their customer for a while, right? It's true for mature brands, but you have to be able to figure out how I get out of it, okay? How do I get out of this rut? And so how do you do? First thing is you got to be honest. Hey, I'm in it right now. I'm in a relationship rut, and I got to do some things to break out of it. Domino's this is from a few years ago, but this is a best in class example. I'm not going to play this whole thing because it's like 4 minutes, but I do want to play a second of you. But basically, Domino's went out there and admitted to the world a few years ago, you may remember this, that the pizza we've been serving you for the last X number of years sucked. They said that. Now, that was a total twist on new and improved, right? New and improved is like, hey, it was good, now we're going to even make it better. No, they went out and said, well, let me play a few minutes of this for you, a few seconds.
There comes a time when you know you've got to make a change. You know, you can't lead a company like this unless you love food. I love food. I love pizza. It was about 50 years ago that they started the first store just about 5 miles from here.
Jim Brothers had a great idea, and they also said they wanted to get it delivered within 30 minutes, and that's something that no one said could be done. In fact, the first pizza delivery vehicle for our company is that vehicle right there. Around the 80s, we were exploding. We were the fastest growing company in the history of franchise business. Nothing had ever grown like that.
Now we're almost 9,000 restaurants around the world. We love what we do at Domino's.
Pizza, where's the love? How are bread, sauce, cheese, fresh ingredients? Doesn't feel like there's much love in Domino's pizza.
Domino's pizza crust to me is like cardboard.
Is that hard washed and stuff?
Yeah, it's hand washed.
I hear what some folks are saying about us.
That's not bad. Worst excuse for pizza I've ever had.
The sauce tastes like ketchup?
Totally void of flavor.
You know what? When you first hear it, it's shocking.
Cardboard complaint is the most common one.
This we hear over and over and over.
I mean, it hits you right in the heart. This is what we've done. This is what I've done, for 25 years now.
You can either use negative comments to get you down, or you can use them to excite you and energize the process of making a better pizza. We did the latter.
Most companies hide the criticism that they're getting, and we actually faced it head on.
Some people didn't give us credit for the taste of our product. That's what we're fixing.
We listen to our consumers and they want us to be better and we want them to be happier. We want people to love our pizza.
This is what's driving us. This is what's lit the fire under us. This is what's making us want to get better.
So that's the idea, right? They went out, and this was played, they did commercials showing like that focus group. Like they did all of this and said, yeah, it's not been very good, and we're changing that. So they were honest about it, which was really, at the time, very shocking and very transparent. And oh, by the way, when they launched their new pizza on their website, and so they would broadcast, every time someone made a comment, they'd put it up there. It was this running stream, and they were very honest and transparent. It was like, a lot of them were like, hey, I love the new pizza, and they'd put that, obviously that out there, but there's still, people would be like, oh, it still sucks, or whatever. They'd put that out there. It was real time and transparent. So that's the idea, is you gotta be honest, you gotta be transparent on this kind of stuff. And maybe I've just messed this up because it doesn't like me, because I stopped it halfway in between. Their pizza tasted like cardboard. So now, bad relationship moves can also harm your business. Y'all remember Peloton from a couple years ago? This commercial, right? They create a message, and sometimes you got to watch what you're doing, right? So this holiday ad was an example of an ad really missing the mark, and it had some significant financial consequences. You have to test, whenever you do, you have to make sure that you're doing things in the right way. Talk to your members, talk to your customers. Another one, Bud Light. Remember that one? Dylan Mulvaney? Okay? Now, I'm not going to get into the politics of this, right? But Bud Light had a customer, a consumer. This was not what that consumer was looking for. Remember when I said early on, a brand, if they make a misstep, your customer, if they're in love with you, will feel like if you do something, change something, or whatever, that doesn't jive or align with their own personal beliefs, they're going to turn off, and it will hurt them. The idea of brand love, if it goes away, changes, does something wrong, those consumers were really angry. Now, It might have been, the intentions were probably all very good, but you have to think about the big picture, all right? And you could see they're still trying to recover from that, all right? Finally, the last thing I want to talk about is the idea of how another way to make these connections is tell your story. Create a story, right? Brand storytelling. You think about storytelling, right? Go back to days of cavemen. They would write the stories on the walls. They told stories. We're a very story-oriented society, right? And you got all these stories. And stories help with familiarity, okay? You can create meaning with stories. You know, you can create stories based on common genres, you know, featuring certain characters, right? They help us become emotionally engaged. They encourage processing. Dos Equis is a story, right? That brand is a story. The most interesting man in the world. It helps us facilitate recall. People are exposed to 3,000 messages a day or whatever the latest number is in the research, right? Between everything we see and experience, and you've got to be able to break through. Sometimes stories help us to break through the clutter. And this is where every touch point is important. Think about every touch point that your member experiences with your credit union. Everything from the website, and this is more general, but there's a lot of things that are applicable here, right? Your salespeople or your people on the front line, any kind of kiosk, events, your support, customer support, the products that you design, your advertising, any kind of packaging, pricing, what your branches are like, your website, mobile, everything goes into creating the brand message, the idea. And here's the challenge, is that you've got these different pieces, and I see it all the time. There's inconsistencies. One group is doing one thing, another group is doing another thing. The messaging is different. People are exposed to 3,000 messages a day, and if you're saying 6 things out there in 3 different ways, whoosh, no one's going to get it. You have got to be laser focused in terms of what you're communicating. You have got to make sure the proverbial everybody is singing out of the same hymnal has got to be in place. These guys do a really good job of it. Everything aligning, right? Because each touch point is often autonomous. You have different people managing different things. And if you're not holistic and focused, you're going to blur your message. So the idea here is to tell your story. All right? Anyone familiar with the show Mad Men? Just a couple of y'all, some of y'all are? Okay, Mad Men, my all-time favorite. As a marketing guy, it's my all-time favorite TV show because it blends history and marketing and advertising, okay? So I like to play this because I think it really helps come to life and make this idea come to life. Mad Men, for those of you that don't know, it's a show set throughout the decade of the 1960s. I think it ran for 8 seasons, and they basically went from 1960 through 1970, essentially, 1969, 1970. So you can imagine the amount of change that happens in this show, because what 1960 was like versus what 1969 and 1970 was like was 2 radically different ways of how this country looked and how things operated. But they integrate real-world cases and brands and products at the time and advertisements. And the idea of this guy is Don Draper, and he is kind of the head creative guy and the star of the show. And this scene right here is early on, it's like in the early 60s. So they have Eastman Kodak in, and they have this brand new technology called a slide projector. Remember those? I can remember those a little bit. But they have this brand new technology, and they're trying to figure out, how do we even market this thing? They want to call it the wheel, okay? And they're like, well, how do we make this thing called the wheel? Because it looks like a wheel, right? You know, we all remember slide shows, right? And so Don Draper, this is the story that they tell. Okay, this is the story he's come up with. Caveat, very early 1960s. All men, all smoking. I think there's one woman, and she's in the corner, and she's like the person that does the projector, or is kind of like does the lights. She's like the secretary. Okay, so it is way old-fashioned, way out of touch there, but that's the purpose of the show too, to kind of illustrate that. But anyway, let me show you this, and it's kind of interesting. Okay.
It's a wonderful facility, but they don't take vacation. What do they show? Slides of you working?
So have you figured out a way to work the wheel into it?
We know it's hard because wheels aren't really seen as exciting technology, even though they are the original.
Well, technology is a glittering movement. But there is a rare occasion when the public can be engaged on a level beyond flash. If they have a sentimental bond with the product. My first job, I was in-house at a fur company. This old pro copywriter, Greek named Teddy. Teddy told me the most important idea in advertising is new. Creates an itch. You simply put your product in there as a kind of calamine. We also talk about a deeper bond with the product. Nostalgia. It's delicate. But potent. Here. Teddy told me that in Greek, nostalgia literally means the pain of an old wound. It's a twinge in your heart, far more powerful than memory alone. This device isn't a spaceship. It's a time machine. It goes backwards, forwards. It takes us to a place where we ache to go again. It's not called the wheel. It's called the carousel. It lets us travel the way a child travels. Round and around, and back home again. To a place where we know we're loved. Good luck at your next meeting.
Tell your story. Make it come to life. Figure out all these, what you are tangibly, and how that ladders up into what you're going to do for your member, how you're going to make them feel, what your brand's personality is going to be, that they want to connect with you, what it says about them that they are using you. Because, and I'll leave you with a quote from Hamilton, the play. If you don't tell your brand's story, who will? Who lives, who dies, who tells your story? No one else is going to do it. Position yourself or others will, is the classic quote. So my urge and my recommendation to you is simply figure out what you are, what makes you different, what makes you better, what makes you special, and then figure out the type of member that really is going to find that powerful, and try to figure out the way that you can connect with that member. And do it through a number of different ways. Do it through social media, do it through personal connections, do it through the products you offer, but make sure everything you're doing is aligned and consistent. And that's what I wanted to share with you today. So thank you.
Fun fact, is Bo in the room? Okay. In 2013, I just went back and found the picture. Our very savvy marketing person Bo used the Dos Equis craze that was going on to do a promotion for our credit union.
Nice.
I don't always need a loan, but when I do, I go to Palmetto.
There you go. All right.
And we got some of our male employees to dress up with like the black suit with the white
Nice.
and collar shirt, and sitting there with a little pose, and it was very attention getting.
You never knew 10 years later it'd come back to haunt you again, huh? There you go. Happy to answer any questions or open it up for any questions that you all might have about thoughts or insights. Yeah.
For the Dos Equis, do you know if you might know this, a timeline from kind of the brainstorming to the execution?
Yeah, that's a great question. I interviewed a number of members on that team for the book. It was about a 2-year kind of thing. By the time you got the insights, then you developed the creative. And it went on for 4 or 5 years. Now, the rest of that story on Dos Equis is that they dropped the ball. They got into a negotiating issue with the most interesting man in the world. After 4 or 5 years, he knew how big he had become. I guess he wanted more money or whatever. And then they tried to create a new most interesting man in the world who looked strangely a lot like Michael Phelps. I don't know if you all remember this, but then that didn't go anywhere, probably because of what we were talking about. He was 20-something. He was a young-looking guy, and it didn't have the same kind of context. And now they're lost, to be honest with you. So what you have to do is you have to plan, you have to think about, don't get in a rut and figure out the longevity. But yeah, and it depends on, there's not one fast answer as how long does this take, right? Sometimes you get these insights pretty immediately and you can go and do it. But being a bigger company like Heineken, there was a lot of approvals and testing and that kind of stuff. So yeah. Yeah. What happened with New Coke? Oh, you want me to go back to that story, huh? Why did Coke mess that up? That's a whole lecture I can do. Let me give you the 2-minute version on that. Coca-Cola, back in 1985, with the invention of New Coke, didn't ask the right questions. They had a situation, so they were kind of, they were kind of figuring out what their situation was. They saw that Pepsi was doing better. Pepsi was doing better for a couple reasons. They had this thing called the Pepsi Challenge, where you basically went out and every shopping mall they were doing this Pepsi Challenge. And Pepsi knew, by the way, they were going to win the Pepsi Challenge. Because a little known fact in doing one-sip taste test is the sweeter thing will win. Almost always when you're talking about soft drinks. So Pepsi knew that. Pepsi is sweeter than Coke. Now, if you drink a whole can or a whole 12-pack, the game changes. But if you just have a blinded sip test, Pepsi was winning 2-1. So Coke saw that. They saw some other share numbers that showed that Pepsi, because of more of its aggressive marketing than its taste, was starting to chip into Coke's franchise. Now, what happened there was that Pepsi also had, at the time, the biggest singer on the planet marketing their brand, a guy by the name of Michael Jackson. You might have heard of him. And ultimately, they did that. And so Coke kind of, and I use this, I teach a research class, and we kind of go in and say, this is how you can get in trouble by asking the wrong question. Coke was more worried about the formulation and asked the wrong question in their research. So it was all about the formulation, and they created a new formulation, and the new formulation beat the old Coke formulation, and the new formulation would beat the Pepsi formulation, but they didn't take into account all the history and the branding and everything that was in that red can. And the question that they failed to ask in research, and they spent hundreds, if not millions of dollars in consumer research, they basically asked all the questions they needed to except for this one, and this was the money question that they didn't ask. All right, if we replace this one with this one, if we take the Coke that you know and love away, that formula, and replace it with this one, how do you feel now? They never asked that question. We call that the hidden obvious, right? Like, why wouldn't they have asked that question? But at the time, they were so gung-ho on formulation and beating Pepsi and beating the existing, they didn't think about the implications that would have of it taking away. So that's this, yeah.
So, put it in our perspective, they got lost in the numbers and quit listening to the people.
Exactly, yeah. And you can do that, right? You can, analysis paralysis, you can look at the numbers and you can come up with inferences and conclusions that may not be the case. And that's why you have to be, you have to talk to your members and really try to understand not just what they're saying, right? Because that's important. Henry Ford had a quote, it's at least attributed to him. I don't know if he really said it, but it's been passed down for years. Henry Ford, the owner, the maker of Ford, he said, if I had asked people what they want, I would have built them a faster horse. Right? You have to take what people say, and you have to be a good marketer and infer what they mean. What they meant was, I need to get from point A to point B more quickly. How do I now meet that need that they have? Well, yeah, I can't really create a faster horse, so I'm going to create something with a motor on it that will go much faster than a horse will go. That's what you have to do. You have to listen to your customers or your members and then create and understand what are they saying behind what they're saying in some cases. Yeah.
Don't you think at some level the Pepsi challenge highlighted the divisive parties? Because I still hear people that are Coke people.
Oh, yeah.
Or Pepsi people.
Yeah.
That kind of showed that was a thing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. It played into that. I mean, I'll give Pepsi credit for that. That's one of the last few things I think they did really well. No, I'm showing my bias. But that knowing that they were going to win that, knowing that they would win the Pepsi challenge, that was great. And there's a book out there by Roger Enrico, the president of Pepsi at the time, said The Other Guy Blink, How Pepsi Won the Cola Wars. Now, it was a short-term win, but it was a good win for them. And they knew they were going to win. So sometimes, and that's, at the end of the day, right? What do you have in your back pocket as a credit union? What do you know you're going to win at? That's what we really should be focusing on. What do we do better than our competition? What makes us different? What makes us special? Yes?
Because their approach,
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious if you know, what was the thing that when did they come to a realization, like, our pizza sucks?
Yeah.
We have to do something about it? Was it just a financial thing where that they were losing that, or was it something?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I think they crutched it forever. Remember, if you remember, Domino's Forever was about the 30-minute delivery and getting it, guaranteeing that, and that was really what they never were talking about taste. They were always talking about 30 minutes or your pizza's free or whatever it ended up being. And they, I think, started to see declines, business declines. And they realized that, hey, there's a lot better specialty pizzas out there as the category evolves. Categories always evolve. So you always need to be thinking about what's changing in my category. What are competitors doing? How do I need to respond? And I think they saw that was something that, hey, we really do need to step up our game in terms of our taste. What was different about what they did was the fact that they were so transparent. They were so transparent. Again, the classic traditional marketing thing would be like, hey, here's our new and improved pizza. It's great now. It's even better than it was. What they did was they kind of flipped that. It was like, God, and it was risky. The pizza we've been serving you for all these many years isn't really that good. So we've created something that's much better. And that's being open and transparent, and it was a risk. But in this day and age, I think especially with all the transparency that's out there in the social media space, et cetera, you got to be transparent. So. Other questions or thoughts or?
Just one other comment. If you guys haven't watched Mad Men in your marketing, you have to watch it. Do you remember what the very final episode highlighted?
I do remember that, yeah. Don Draper on a mountaintop in doing yoga, who had gone through so many ups and downs, and this was kind of, you thought his character was just going to be, I won't say what happened necessarily in case people want to watch it, but there was a tie back into Coca-Cola with that, which definitely, if you know the Coca-Cola Hilltop, I'd like to buy the world a Coke commercial, the very famous commercial. We have people from all over the world singing there was kind of his inspiration for that is how the series ended. Yeah, it was good. It took me, I mean, I got it right away, but like I remember my dad calling me, I don't get this ending. And I was like, I had to explain it, right? So anyway. Anything else? Anything in the back? Bo, anything? No? All right, well, thank you guys. This has been a pleasure to kind of engage and talk with you on all this.